Homeless man finds babies in dumpster. 20 years later, they give him a house undefined. The winter wind carried more than cold that December morning. It carried the weight of 20 years, pressing against Elias Franklin's weathered shoulders as he navigated the familiar labyrinth of city streets. His shopping cart's wheels sang their discordant song against cracked pavement, a melody he'd grown accustomed to in the years since purpose had abandoned him. Once, those same hands that now gripped the cart's rusted handle had possessed magic. In his small repair shop on Roosevelt Avenue, surrounded by the comforting chaos of copper wires and vacuum tubes, Elias had breathed life back into broken things. The scent of hot solder had been his incense, the satisfied hum of a restored radio his prayer. Norrin would visit during lunch breaks, her laughter cutting through the electronic static like sunlight through storm clouds, while young Peter would perch on the workbench, eyes wide with wonder at his father's ability to resurrect the dead. But death, when it came for Norrin, proved beyond even Elias's considerable skills. The cancer consumed not only his beloved wife but everything else. The shop, the tools, the delicate antique clock that had marked their anniversaries. Peter's 17-year-old heart, already fractured by loss, shattered completely against his father's grief. Words sharp as broken glass passed between them until silence became unbearable, and Peter walked away into the city's hungry embrace, leaving Elias alone with the echoes of what used to be. That morning behind Westwood Grocery, the dumpster squatted like a green metal monument to society's discards. Elias approached it with the weary familiarity of routine, expecting nothing more than bruised fruit and yesterday's bread. Instead, he found tomorrow. The cry that stopped him wasn't quite human at first. Too fragile, too desperate. But as his trembling fingers lifted the heavy lid, his breath caught in his throat like a trapped bird. Two infants, dark-skinned and impossibly small, lay nestled between garbage bags like discarded dreams. The boy's plaintive wails pierced the morning air while his sister lay still as prayer, her chest rising and falling in whispered rhythms. Time fractured. In that moment, Elias saw Peter as a newborn, saw Norrin's tears of joy, saw every abandoned thing he'd ever tried to save. His coat came off without thought, his body moving with purpose that had been dormant for years. The baby's skin felt like ice against his chest as he cradled them, their combined weight somehow filling an emptiness he'd carried for decades. "You're okay, little ones," he whispered into their downy hair, words becoming prophecy. "I've got you now." Mary's hospital erupted around his arrival. Nurses materialized like angels. Doctors barked orders that sounded like prayers. The immutable logic of proper homes and adequate resources. Elias had neither. He could only watch as his children, for that's what they'd become in those precious weeks, were wheeled away toward futures he couldn't provide but had made possible. The years that followed carried their own quiet magic. Elias returned to fixing things, but now each repaired radio carried intention. Each mended bicycle, a prayer sent into the universe. He crafted toys from discards for shelter children, taught teenagers the forgotten art of making broken things whole again. Every November 3rd found him behind that same dumpster, leaving small offerings, a knit scarf, a tiny blanket, infant mittens, tokens of gratitude for the moment that had reminded him what love could look like. 20 years later, living in the corner bed at Haven House Shelter, Elias had grown comfortable with his particular brand of invisibility. His beard had turned winter white, his steps had slowed, but his hands still remembered their craft. He existed in the margins, helping other forgotten souls navigate the city's indifference, finding purpose in small kindnesses. The invitation arrived like lightning in a clear sky, elegant script on cream-colored paper, addressing him formally as Mr. Elias Franklin and requesting his presence at the Riverside Banquet Hall. He read it 3 times before allowing himself to believe it was real, 4 times before deciding to attend. December 12th found him in his cleanest shirt and only tie, borrowed dignity worn like armor as he entered a world of crystal and candlelight. The hostess knew his name, guided him through marble corridors toward a ballroom that hummed with energy and expectation. When the lights dimmed and the young man in the gray suit took the microphone, Elias felt the universe shift on its axis. The voice was unfamiliar, but the words cut straight to his heart. 20 years ago, my brother and I were left to die behind a grocery store dumpster. The second young man, taller and broader, but with the same careful grace, stepped forward. A man with nothing but his coat gave us everything when he had nothing. Elias felt his knees buckle as recognition bloomed like sunrise in his chest. The crowd rose in thunderous approval, but all he could hear were their names, whispered like benedictions. I'm Amara, and I'm Aiden. Their embrace felt like coming home after decades of wandering. 20 years collapsed into heartbeats as they held him. These men who had grown from the broken children he'd pulled from despair. Amara, now a cardiac surgeon whose hands saved hearts the way Elias once saved radios. Aiden, an engineer who built homes for those who needed shelter, understanding intimately what it meant to be discarded. The house they gave him sat on a quiet street with maple trees and morning sunlight. The keys felt impossibly heavy in his weathered palm, weighted with decades of accumulated kindness finally finding its way home. The workshop out back smelled of fresh wood and possibility, shelves lined with tools that gleamed like promises. But it was the Fridays that mattered most, when Amara and Aiden would arrive with groceries and stories, settling into the comfortable rhythms of family. They would sit on the porch swing, watching neighborhood children play, sharing the comfortable silence of people who understood that love wasn't always loud or dramatic, but sometimes simply present, constant as heartbeat, reliable as sunrise. In those moments, watching his found sons navigate their accomplished lives with the same careful grace they'd shown as infants, Elias understood that some circles take decades to complete. The man who had once refused to walk, past suffering, had been rewarded not with fanfare, but with the quiet miracle of belonging, the profound gift of being needed and remembered and loved. The workshop hummed again with the sound of things being fixed, but now each repair carried the weight of legacy, each restored object a testament to the possibility of resurrection, the stubborn insistence that broken things, broken people, could be made whole again with patience, skill, and the radical act of refusing to abandon what others had discarded.